The future is big and the future is bright. At least that seems to be the consensus when it comes to Game Boy Color screens. But I'm your cool Uncle Marissa, and I kind of like something a little different. So if you ask anyone right now, the current standard for a Game Boy Color IPS mod is the funny playing laminated retro pixel display. It's been this way for a while. Funny playing's displays for Game Boy Color were the go-to, even before they were laminated, and I remember modding Game Boys for folks with that screen, and it didn't have the retro pixel effect yet, and it looked so bad to me. But the retro pixel effect now is a huge boon because it finally looks normal, but at the same time, it's not an ITA screen or a TN or TFT screen, which to me looks more natural. It always has, it always will. If you have watched any of my other Game Boy related videos, you know that my favorite screen ever, bar none, is the laminated Game Boy Advance ITA screen from Funny Playing also. So I just wanted to take a moment to share with you my favorite Game Boy Color screen, and that is the Cloud Game Store 2.45-inch TN display. Now, the way that I came to this display was a bit of a progression. So I have two Game Boy Colors, and they are both Pokemon Gold Silver editions, and I really like these editions, especially for the lenses. So obviously I was not going to swap out the lens. I needed something that was regular sized, and at the time one option was Ben's Aioli. And Ben is a super cool guy in Australia who has been making stuff for the Game Boy line and other handhelds for a really long time. Now, the only downside of the Aioli is that while it was a TFT screen, that was a no-cut solution. It was smaller than the original screen, so there were black lines on the side. But the CGS screen is the exact size, and it's a no-cut solution, and so it is absolutely perfect if you are a purist, if you have a limited shell that you want to play and not damage. So let's go take a look at it.
All right, so Mr. Driller again, because it's just so colorful. And this is my Japanese Pokemon Center Game Boy Color, which I just polished the screen to get rid of a bunch of scratches. As you can see, there's no gaps between the lens and the display. It's a absolutely perfect fit. It has a touch sensor, and you cycle through 7 levels of brightness by tapping it. It is also not super easy to set off. It's not super sensitive. Now, if you press and hold, you can enter a couple of other display modes. So this is a retro pixel mode. And then we have a black and white and a black and white pixel grid mode, which are really great for if you want to play an original Game Boy game in a grayscale palette. So my favorite mode in real life is the regular, non-gridded screen. Through my camera lens, the pixel effect looks so good, but I swear it doesn't look like this in real life. In real life, it refracts light through any area of your lens that has any sort of scratch, which on a plastic lens that's been through stuff, it's gonna be a reasonable amount of area. Now, like I said, I did polish this lens, but polishing plastic or anything is you're creating a bunch of micro abrasions, and the retro pixel effect actually sees through that as well. It's a lot more glaring both on my other Game Boy Color, which does have a few scratches, and it was a lot more glaring on this Game Boy Color before I polished it. However, it is impossible to catch on camera. Now, I do think that if you are using a glass lens, the retro pixel effect would look a lot better. And just a new lens overall, which doesn't have any sort of scratches or indents or cuts, would probably capture it a lot better, and you wouldn't have that refraction of light. I don't really know how to explain it. It's like a shimmer. It's really just such a shame that I can't capture it. But also because this is a TN screen and it is a smaller size, it looks really good and original, even in the basic color palette without the retro pixel effect. Now, very quickly, I want to touch on installation. So the installation is very simple. It comes with a piece of plastic to align the screen. and otherwise it's fairly drop-in. It does advertise itself as being solder-free, but it makes you wrap the wire around a battery terminal, which, other than being aesthetically displeasing, it seems like a liability for a short. Thankfully, in Mako's review of this screen, he talks about a different way to solder it, and that's just to the pin on the power switch, which says C. Now, on their AliExpress page right now, it does say that you no longer need to do that, but at the same time, the old instructions are still there, so not having had the chance to try one of the updated kits, I can't say if that has changed.
Now, just a few final thoughts on the display. It's obviously not perfect, but a lot of those lack of perfections are part of the reason why it works for the use case that I use it for. First off, it's not laminated. I would have loved for it to be laminated if it was something that I would be using in custom builds, but since it's going into these special edition shells, then I don't want it to be laminated. But I could see that being an issue if you are looking for a display for a completely from scratch build, or you're swapping the lens out. Another thing obviously is no on-screen display. That's, you know, a little annoying, but at the same time it's completely fine because it's the exact same size. So in terms of centering the image, that's not something that you need to worry about. Also, the only thing you're doing is controlling the brightness. So it's not like, for example, the Game Boy Pocket funny playing screen, which we were talking about in an earlier video, where if you touch the sensor, you shift palettes and then you have to go through all the palettes again to get back to where you were. This is just brightness, so it's not that huge of a deal, and there's only a few stops anyway. And finally, the just weird install of the wire around the battery terminal is just very dodgy and botched together. And I mean, I think that they did that as part of the push for, hey, this is a solder-free install, anyone can do it. And while I think that that's a nice push, I'm really glad that we have Mako's video on the screen so we know where to solder that wire instead of just leaving it hanging on a terminal. Otherwise, any cons I have for it would lead the answer to being just buy a funny playing retro pixel screen, which is what we're not talking about here. Yeah, I haven't heard this screen really talked about a lot, especially in the more recent years, and I don't want it to fade into obscurity. So if you are looking for something that either meets these needs, or again, if you're a purist or anything of the sort, definitely grab one while they're still there and being made. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if there's anything else you want to hear my favorite of in the comments. I am more than happy to share, and I will see you in the next video. Do not forget that you are always welcome at Cool Uncle's house. Bye-bye now.